4 live right now.
We're
Okay.
live. We're live. We have to check in to make sure that we are actually live in all of the places where we're trying to go live, which is always the fun little tech check of
Yes.
the which we will hopefully complete very quickly. We're starting to get used to this. So, but welcome everybody.
Yep, we're live.
Yay. Okay. Fantastic.
Okay. So welcome. We're so excited. This is week 4 of our 7 weeks of comfort. This is a whole brand new thing that we're doing. And so we love that you guys are here with us. This is our second night in a row going live because yesterday we entered into the first day of the month of Elul. So if you didn't catch that, you can find that in the Facebook group or on our YouTube channel. And so we're going to jump into the 4th week.
Awesome. Well, we just want to quickly take a minute. I know it sounds kind of odd. Quickly take a minute. But we just want to take a minute to really settle our hearts. I don't know what kind of week you guys have had. I don't know what kind of day you've had. But I know that we just want to kind of quiet ourselves. We just want to take refuge and rest in God and just kind of settle into His presence. So, Abba, we just ask that you would join us here, that you would help us to put away everyone and everything and just focus our attention on you, that you would have the full scope of our attention, our thoughts, and that we can just rest in you. That as we go and just sort of talk about everything you're doing in these 7 weeks of comfort, that you would truly bring that comfort to everyone's heart, that your presence would enter everyone's heart with that sense of comfort and just bring peace to everyone as we just sort of dig into what we're going to talk about today. And thank you for all that you do for us, Abba, and all the ways that you just show up for us and love us. We are so grateful for you. Thank you. And in your son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Yes. So this is exciting. It's a time known on the Hebrew calendar also as Teshuvah, which is repentance. And we're going to be unpacking so much over these last 4 weeks that we have left. So This week we have titled it Reclaiming Joy. Reclaiming Joy, the pathway of comfort in God's timing. So that I felt like there was a lot in that because we sometimes don't know what God's timing is.
Yeah.
What is that saying that he is never early, but he
God is always on time, but he is almost never early.
Yes. So true. So we know that alignment and waiting is all part of it. It's resting in him and finding that peace. So welcome to week 4. This week, we are delving very deep into the endless depths of God's compassion and his mercy. So as we were sharing, we're coming off of the heels of the 2 greatest sins of the Israelites, which was that basically it came down to their unbelief, their lack of faith. And what we've been talking about is how in Hebrew, faith is trust. So it really comes down to their lack of trust in God. And that was what broke his heart, literally, just the saddest thing. So, man, isn't our struggle usually for that, to have faith, to have trust?
Yeah.
Even when it's not on time, even when we don't understand. So very, very cool. This month that we're into is about God's compassion and mercy, giving that to the people, even when his heart was broken.
Yeah.
So I love that. So we are continuing to build on the foundation we laid since week 1, where we established sacred rhythms. Everything is about that, rhythms. So the first week we talked about writing and reading in your inspired life manifesto, engaging in an honest and heartfelt dialogue with God. So hopefully you guys have been practicing that, remembering that our day starts in the evening. So as you lay down to go to bed, that's a good time to do your safe haven exercise and really embrace the fact that God's first thing he wants you to do in the day is rest in him. So finding that peace and finding that rest. So as we embrace these practices, we talked a lot last week about how we noticed resistance. that resistance wants to rise up whenever we are practicing, especially our inspired life manifesto, where we're speaking out who we want to be, who we know that we are, who God called us to be. We know that that can have resistance. So these old beliefs, fears, doubts that try to pull us back into familiar, but patterns that are limiting. So we carry, all of us carry this internal programming. It's thoughts and beliefs that shape how we see the world, how we see ourselves, how we feel that other people see us, you know, all these things. And these scripts often go unnoticed. They operate like it's like your operating system. So it's going on in the background, right? And it influences our actions, our experiences, how we perceive our perceptions of things. It's very, very, very powerful. And we talked last week about this is so powerful in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 10:5, taking captive every thought and making it obedient to Christ. So what we want to do is keep bringing those hidden scripts, those lies, into the light of God's truth. So this is an interesting thought. Our goal is not to eliminate negative thoughts altogether, because they will slip in. They're going to slip in. But our goal is to change our response to them. Yeah. So oftentimes you can think about a negative thought, something it's bringing your attention to a place that needs healing. And so it's really not about having shame. It's about mercy. And it's about aligning with the truth of who God says you are. So the more that you free your mind from the past, the more room you create for God's hope to fill your heart, which is ultimately where joy comes from, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, gosh, it's one of those things that's it's so hard for us, because we think that, you know, if we just say enough positive affirmations, or if we just, you know, think enough positive things, somehow that it's going to change. And, you know, there is a certain behavior modification in that, but ultimately we're really trying to get to the heart of things. God always operates at the heart level, and his heart is, he wants to enter that place where we're having that negative thought and heal what's causing us to think negatively or to speak negatively in the first place. He wants to get to the root of that, right? He's not interested in, you know, forcing us to say or do the right things. He's interested in changing our hearts so that we want to do and say the right things.
Yeah.
Because we recognize that not only does it honor God and show our love for him, but it's also just the best way to do something.
Right.
At the end of the day. And so in this fourth week, we're entering into the Hebrew month of Elul. It's common practice for the Hebrews to read Psalm 27 each day, primarily because it focuses a very powerful message that kind of fills each week with a centrality of God, right, as we're counting up to Rosh Hashanah, which is the new year on the Hebrew calendar. So I just want to read, not the whole thing, but just the first 3 chapters of Psalm 27. This is from the Complete Jewish Bible. Adonai is my light and salvation. Whom do I need to fear? Adonai is the stronghold of my life. Of whom should I be afraid? When evildoers assailed me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and foes, they stumbled and fell. If an army encamps against me, my heart will not fear. If war breaks out against me, even then I will keep trusting. And I love this because, you know, it really speaks that the reality of God is stronger than the reality that's around us. In other words, the power of God and God's love and protection was stronger in the eyes of David than the armies encamped around him. I mean, he wasn't ignoring the fact that there's armies encamped around him. He's just saying, yeah, but God.
Right. Right.
If I was going to shorthand Psalm 27, I would say, yeah, but God. Like whatever you come up with that seems to prove otherwise or demonstrate otherwise or seems insurmountable, but God. But God.
Yeah.
And these verses, you know, are not just poetry. They're really a battle cry for our souls. David's words are inviting us into a place of divine intimacy and confidence, right? It's a reminder God is our light, and that light cuts through shadows of doubt and despair. God is our salvation, our safe refuge when the storms of life are raging all around us. In fact, God is our reward. It's his presence that is the point of everything. And so each week, as you are going through these verses, I hope that you find yourself drawn deeper and deeper into the heart of God, that you just discover a depth to God's love for you, the strength, the hope, and love that he's offering to you. And Psalm 27 is really just a testament to that faithfulness of God. And so we're kind of hoping that it's an anthem of your soul, of our souls, in these weeks of comfort. You know, another fascinating aspect of the month of Elul is the fact that it is the 6th month on the Hebrew calendar. And the number 6, as most numbers do, because the Hebrew alphabet is alphanumeric, meaning it's alphabetic, but then there's a numerical value that's attached to each of those letters. The 6th letter in the Hebrew alphabet is the letter Vav. The letter Vav is depicted as a nail or a hook or a spear, because also Hebrew is a pictographic language, meaning that its words, its letters have pictures, right, connected to them. And so it signifies a connection or a uniting. So you could say Jesus was vaved or nailed to the cross for us, right? The reason that this is so important is because it's, again, a reminder that Jesus is the center of it all. He is the door through which everything goes. So it's through his death, he brings the hope of heaven, and this unites heaven and earth together, as it was part of the original design in Eden. There was not supposed to be any separation between God and his creation. We were supposed to live in unified harmony together. So he's crucified on the 6th day of the Hebrew calendar, dying at the 6th hour, which just emphasizes even more that Jesus is the center of it all. And so the first appearance of the letter Vav in the Bible is actually in Genesis 1:1. And this is where it's connecting heaven and earth. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Jesus is the Vav. It literally speaks about, in Jesus, everything is held together. He's truly the connection that binds heaven and earth. And it's through him that we experience our true connection to God.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love that. There's so much depth in all of this. And I wanted to take a second first to welcome all of you guys, because we can't see it on what we're looking at, but I can see it on my phone. So welcome to Gamgee is here. Mackenzie is here. Kelly, Miriam. I'm so excited to see you guys. And Kenzie, you have a question. What was the poem? What was Dan reading? He's reading Psalm 27. And this, what kind of like a Hebrew tradition is to read that psalm every day. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to kind of break it down over the course of these next 4 weeks. So this week, we just focused on the first 3 verses of Psalm 27. So we're going to break it up each week, but feel free to read that. It's very powerful. And really that heart of that he is our refuge, because David is going to God as his refuge, which is so beautiful. But yes, I love that so much, and how all of these letters are pictures. So incredible how God does that. And when you start to go down those rabbit holes, we don't even bring up everything that we learn about that, because literally you just need to do a whole teaching on just that, like for each number. But we talked last night about the number 10, because the letter that's associated with the month, but today we talked about the number 6 because of the connections that it had there, and there's just so much to learn. So this was really, really cool, because as we continued on, we really felt the Spirit guide us to a beautiful like convergence of 2 very profound images or things that are biblical that are very, very powerful. And that is one, that is that this month is connected to the king is in the field. We talked a little bit about that last night. And another very powerful one is the prodigal son and the story of the prodigal son. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the convergence of those two. And they both speak to the heart of our faith, which is a God who draws near to us and meets us right where we are. And he longs to restore us to our true identity as his beloved children. So think about that. That is what we've been talking about, like taking the thoughts captive, making them obedient to Christ's truth about who you are. And really that's just our journey, our lifelong journey on this earth is really living it in that connection. So both of these stories or these parts of the Bible are intertwined in that. So the king in the field, we talked about last night. During this time, there's this image of the king leaving his palace and coming into the field. Big deal, huge deal. Because he doesn't come in all of his royal splendor. He comes humbly so that he can be approached by the common people who could never, ever get a time in front of him while he was in his palace, right? So that they could approach him without fear. There are no ceremonies required. There's no barriers. The king is here in the open, waiting to meet us in our everyday lives. So the picture of that is that he steps into our world, into the mundane fields of our existence, so to speak, to remind us always that we are not alone.
Yeah.
That we are never alone. And his presence is actually an invitation to return to him, to reconnect with the one who knows us deeply and loves us without condition. So incredibly powerful. Yeah. So the prodigal son is another one I wanted to recommend, and Dan is going to share a little bit more about this, but this book, The Return of the Prodigal Son, is a book that there's a lot, we could do a whole...
Highly recommend.
Yeah, we could do a whole hour on this book and the impact that it had on our lives, but it's a book that I gave Dan when we weren't even dating yet, when I gave Dan this book. And the picture of it is in our entryway of our house, the big picture that we got of it. But this is a very, very powerful story. And it draws our hearts to this idea of this younger son that's lost in his own decisions. He left home thinking, that it was going to be better out there. And he reaches that point where he can no longer deny his need for his father. Yeah. He decides to return. And he doesn't really know how he's going to be received. He's really actually expecting the worst, right? Because why not? He took his money early from his dad, which is basically wishing him to be dead. He says, give me my inheritance now, and moves on. And he squanders it. He squanders it all. So he decides to return. And as he makes his way home, the father, who's literally been watching, waiting, praying, just hoping that he comes back, runs to him. It's a beautiful picture that makes me cry almost every time I think about it, how the father sees him a long way off and begins to run toward him. So beautiful. He doesn't wait for his son to arrive. He goes out to meet him in his rags, in his shame, completely embracing, welcoming. It's incredible. It's an incredible story. And I loved these two stories. And as we've been talking about this and kind of seeing what the Spirit is saying about that, it's really cool to see how these parables are really the same, one and the same. In a sense, they both depict a God who meets us where we are. The king leaves his palace. The father leaves his house. Both come into the open, into the place where we are to offer grace and reconciliation. So the king is accessible and the father is so accessible. So we want to recognize that God is not aloof. He's not distant. He's not like this king in the castle somewhere who has no concern for your life. He really isn't. And it's a very, very powerful picture bringing these two together. And so we wanted to just kind of share that. And we recommend this. If you want to dig deeper into it, into that parable, this is a beautiful book. It's by Henri Nouwen, and we'll put a link. But you could get this on Amazon. Beautiful story.
Yeah, it's cool because, like you were saying, there is this intersection of the king and also of this father who embraces us exactly where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Love doesn't have conditions. He's near, his arms are open. It doesn't matter how far we wandered. It doesn't matter what shame or guilt we're carrying. He meets us there, ready to restore us to our place as beloved children. You know, when we think about Jesus, you know, this month is right, the 6th is Vav, it's about connection, right? So Jesus's connection to the cross, right, and his death upon the cross is what brought our connection to him and to life. So his connection with death enabled us to connect with him in order to find life.
Mm.
And the prodigal son is really a story about a misunderstood connection. You know, the younger son thought that he couldn't really find life in his father. He needed to go out there and find life elsewhere. And he spent all of his money on whatever pleasure he could find because he thought that life existed outside of his father, right? And it's interesting because then the elder son actually stays there and he misunderstands the connection. He's just near God. He's just near the Father, but not with the Father. He doesn't allow himself to experience all that the Father offers. And so it's a weird, you know, there's in one sense this religious spirit that governs that stops some people from really experiencing all of the intimacy that God is inviting us into.
Yeah.
And there's other people that are going and they try to find, you know, fulfillment everywhere else except God. And hopefully, prayerfully, at some point in their life, they reach a place where they return to God and they try to find their life in him. Because, you know, we live in a world right now with everything going on in it. There is literally only one safe place, and that's in God. That's it. Everything else has its problems. But it's interesting the lengths to which God will go to connect with us. You know, Vicki mentioned earlier that this was a book she gave me before we were even married. And Henri Nouwen, it was a theologian, and he had a friend that worked at the Hermitage, which is a famous museum in Russia. It's actually Catherine the Great's Winter Palace that has been converted into an amazing gallery of art. And in that gallery is this picture. It's a rather large picture. It's massive. It's probably
8 feet by 6 feet.
7 feet across and probably 12 feet high. It's a huge painting. And so a friend worked there and allowed Henri Nouwen after hours to pull up a chair in front of that painting and just meditate on it. And it's out of that meditation that we got this book, The Return of the Prodigal Son. And I read that book at a point where I needed desperately to connect with God. I was hanging on an edge, teetering over into a dark, dark, dark chasm. And this book really showed me that God desired connection with me in a way that I never understood before. And I remember reading that book, and it was so powerful. God used that book so powerfully in my life. And I remember this thought, wow, wouldn't that be amazing to see that painting someday? And then the second thought that immediately followed was, but like, yeah, when am I ever going to go to Russia? And then about 20 years later, I'm getting on a plane with my friend Christian to speak at a conference in Russia. And after we finished speaking, we went to that museum. And I stood in front of that painting and I had tears running down my face because God had brought that connection all the way back 20 years. brought that connection back into my life and gave that to me, because that's how much God cares about connection.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm forever grateful.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So powerful. And so we want to just leave on that note that he is the king who comes into the field, and he is the father who runs to embrace us. He is near, his arms are open wide, his arms are never too short, right? Like they say. And it's really, really powerful, because no matter how far we are, or we feel like we're so far from God, no matter what, he meets you wherever you are.
Yeah.
And his hope is to restore connection, deepen connection. It's not even like, sometimes our connection's not completely, severed, but it might need to be deeper, or we desire it to be deeper. So very, very powerful. And we are going to go even a little bit more into this next week, because it's also a beautiful picture of Jesus's ministry.
Yeah.
Jesus's ministry is, once a year in this month of Elul is when they felt that God was near, that he was approachable, right? Well, Jesus represents that always, and we always have that. So like he said last night, like Dan, you said last night, it's not like just because this is the month and these are the things that happen in the month that we don't get to experience that all the time. But it's when it becomes more something that we want to focus on and really embrace. And that's kind of how it is with God too. He does these things to help us grow and strengthen in these areas so that it will sustain us forever. That's the whole idea behind Rosh Chodesh, a first fruits teaching, where you set aside time at the beginning of the month so that he blesses the rest. And he's teaching us from a rhythm of rest.
Yeah.
That we find that rest, not just on a Sabbath or on the first day of a new month, but as we go into life, as we experience things that challenge us, as we feel these emotional things and we start to go, okay, I'm triggered. What is this about? And we can rest in God and know that God's got us and that he's there running to greet us like the Father in the prodigal son. It's just so beautiful. So we are excited for week 4 to really unpack this, continue doing. If you haven't watched the other weeks, we welcome you to do that. I'm going to actually put them in the guide so that they're easy to find. Someone asked me that today, like, how do I find these? I thought, oh, we should be putting them in guides so that they're easy. You can just find them very quickly. Otherwise, now you have to kind of scroll through, but we will do that. We will put them in the guides. Also, they are on our app. So if you have the Inspired Life app, you can also find them very easy on the app. So I'll also put the link to that because we have it for Android or Apple for sure. So this week we do have a challenge for you to add in to what we've been doing. So the challenge this week is to spend intentional time each day reflecting on God's nearness. Like, what does that feel like for you? Write down areas where you might feel distant from him and speak aloud the truth that he is here, ready to meet you. He is here. And if you are feeling distant, ask yourself, what's stopping me from feeling a deep union with God?
Yeah.
We talk about this being a time of teshuvah, of repentance, of turning. And so what that means is repent means to turn. So what can I do to actively pursue healing from whatever is keeping me stuck from feeling God, from feeling that? What can I do to really do that healing?
Yeah.
There's lots of things that we talk about. So glad that you're here and in the group, and obviously praying, doing it in your journaling, all those things. God is really wanting all this to come to the surface because this month is about preparing our hearts for the next month, which is starting into a brand new year, a brand new season. And we want to go into that prepared, which to me just means with our hearts open and being able to be fully connected to him.
Yeah.
So we want to just encourage you guys to meditate on this truth. God is for you. He's not against you. God is for you. He is your fortress and your shield. He is not an enemy, and no enemy, no fear, nothing can stand against this Lord of hosts.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Very powerful psalm. So that kind of encapsulates the first 3 verses of the psalm. And this week, our week number 4, as we find these weeks of comfort and reclaiming joy this week.
Yeah.
Reclaiming joy. So that's also understanding that there's comfort in surrendering to God's timing. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. So we're so happy to see you guys all from all different parts.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We know that you got lots of things you can do with your time, and we appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us. So thank you.
Yeah. Have a beautiful and blessed evening, you guys.
Yep.
We'll see you next week. And if you are in our coaching, we will see you tomorrow night on the coaching call. Shalom, you guys. Bye.
Shalom.